Battlefield 6 is almost here, and I wanted to take one final look at the probably final version of the game I got to play last week. You guys really liked my first impressions video where I went into great detail and gave feedback on pretty much every single thing the game had to offer at the time. But now I even got more stuff to talk about, so let's do it. First we're gonna talk about some of the new things I got to experience, and then some of my final pieces of feedback as well. This is, by the way, the exact same feedback I gave directly to EA. Firstly, as you guys know, I got to play on two new maps. The remake of Operation Firestorm and the biggest map in Battlefield 6, Mortar Valley. Both maps were good, but it's not like I was blown away by them or anything. In fact, with Battlefield 6 going back to 64 players, Mortar Valley sometimes felt a little bit empty as most of the action takes place around the construction site in the middle, but overall the maps seemed decently balanced when it comes to vehicle versus infantry combat. Firestorm felt smaller too than the original, but still very familiar, and we also got to play the new game mode called Escalation, which was pretty interesting and a nice change of pace from the regular Conquest game mode. Now let's take a look at some of the changes that have been made since the open beta. First off, the movement has been toned down. There was a very hot topic during the open beta, it still is by the way over on Twitter and stuff. The momentum you carried from sliding into a jump has been reduced, and accuracy right after doing that is also worse now. I think most people will be happy with this, but to be honest, I didn't really try it out in the play session, so I don't really have an opinion on it yet. Helicopters have also been tweaked and they now feel a lot closer to their Battlefield 4 counterparts. That's something fans of the older games will appreciate because the helicopter was kinda ass in the beta. Most land vehicles now come with a boost mode, giving you that extra speed when you need it. Especially for transport vehicles, this is greatly appreciated because let's be honest, 9 times out of 10 you just want to get from point A to point B, and now you can do that much faster. Revives have been improved as well. There is now better feedback during the animation with added sparks and stuff, which makes it feel more clear when you actually do a successful revive. Sniper Glint has also been toned down. It's still there, but it's less aggressive than it was before. In the open beta, it was like a 10,000 lumen flashlight shining straight into your eye, so this is much better. I do wonder what the glint will look like now with the scope attachment that reduces the glint. I'll be testing that out and much more when the game launches, so be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and while you're down there, drop a like for the algorithm. Now, next nerf is regarding the auto spotting that the Recon class had. I thought it was kind of ridiculous in the open beta. You just had to look in the general direction of any enemy and you'd see a giant red icon. That is now also heavily reduced, so I'm really happy with that. Health regeneration has also been slowed down a little bit, which is a step in the right direction. The actual regen speed feels much better, but the delay before it starts still feels a little bit too short in my opinion. I'd like to see that gap extended so you can't instantly, fall back, instantly heal and re-engage without any real consequences. Let's say if you shoot someone from a little distance and they manage to take cover and survive, you should be able to chase them or rush them and finish them off, but it looks like in Battlefield 6, with how fast you regenerate health, it's gonna be a lot harder. Now those are the general big changes since the open beta. Now let's get into my final thoughts and feedback after playing more of the game. Again, this is given directly to EA, so we'll see how much of this will actually transform the game at launch. Now this is obviously focusing mostly on the negatives, and this is in no particular order, though I do want to start with my biggest complaint after participating in the latest playtest, which you might have already heard in my previous video. They changed the aim assist yet again. They changed it yet again. I'm not even joking. Look, the aim assist! It's freaking messed up yet again. What the... I'm so They messed up the aim assist! Like, honestly, why would they touch the aim assist? They messed it up. I'm telling you, they messed it up. Yeah, they messed it up. I'm telling you, they messed it up. Yeah, they messed up the aim assist. I'm telling you, they messed it up. The aim assist issue. Now, a lot of people in the comments of my previous video thought I was crying because I thought the aim assist had been reduced. But it's actually the opposite. I noticed the aim assist way more. It was actually too sticky, and more often than not I felt like it was fighting against me, similar to how Battlefield 2042 felt initially. So I hope they somehow bring back the aim assist feeling we had during the open beta. That was pretty much perfect in my opinion, and I also didn't see anybody complain about that. So I don't understand why they even touched it in the first place. Anyway, I just wanted to start off with that. Now let's look at some less noticeable things. The fighter jet's anti-air missiles need balancing. The lock-on time is way too fast and it gives pilots very little time to react. And the thing, like, each missile did like 50 damage each. So if you manage to get a lock-on with the AA missiles, which as you can see is very fast, the enemy is pretty much dead instantly. On top of that, flares don't consistently counter AA missiles. I believe this might have been a bug during this playtest, but it's a big issue if it carries into launch. The jets themselves though are pretty cool. We finally got to play with the F-22 Raptor, one of my favorite fighter jets in real life, or should I say, the F-97 Kestrel. I mean, seriously, what the hell are those names? I understand trademarks and stuff like that, but this is just ridiculous. Other games can have the real names in their games, so why can't a multi-billion-dollar company like EA manage to do that? Same goes for the gun names. The G3 is now called the AK-4D. I mean, come on. Anyway, I might be in the minority here, but I think it's just lame. After so many years playing with these guns in different video games, to hear somebody potentially say, yo dude, you gotta unlock the AK-4D, it's so powerful. I don't know, it's kind of cringe to me, but again, I might just be slowly turning into a boomer. Anyway, we were talking about the jets. In the playtest, I noticed that the free look camera doesn't move logically with the XY axis. It feels very spherical, so looking around doesn't respond the way you'd expect. In Battlefield Labs it works correctly, so I hope they can fix it here. The infamous pump action shotgun, which was extremely overpowered during the open beta, has also been nerfed. But unfortunately I didn't get the chance to test it out, so I just don't know how effective that nerf is. Either way, despite the potential damage nerf, the rate of fire is still high enough that missing a shot doesn't actually feel like a drawback. One of the core weaknesses of a pump action shotgun should be their slower follow-up shots. And right now that weakness isn't really a weakness because you do the pump action animation really quickly. So one thing they can do is to increase the animation time and make the rate of fire a bit lower. I can talk about the other shotguns though. They seem pretty weak to be honest, so at least we won't be complaining about overpowered semi-auto shotguns. But maybe that's not gonna be the case with the right attachments. And speaking of which, for weapon attachments, I'd like to see more incentive for not spending all your points. Currently there is no reason to hold back. If you got the points, you can always spend some of them on attachments that have no drawbacks. But if unused points could be invested elsewhere, like extra ammo, gadgets, extra movement speed, it would create more meaningful decisions. For example, what if you are an engineer and you could bring an extra rocket for your RPG for like, I don't know, 40 points? That's a lot of points that won't be going towards your gun attachments. Now all of a sudden you only have 60 points to work with for your gun, which makes you think more carefully on how you spend those points on attachments. I honestly believe this is a great idea, but let me know down below what you think. When it comes to gun balance, I've noticed there is more spread dependency than recoil dependency now. So spread-based gunplay is back, kinda, a little bit. Personally, I don't think that's the right choice for this game. Managing recoil feels more skill-based, whereas spread introduces a lot more randomness. And I know people are gonna say, well, just tap fire, but I don't think that's skillful at all. Tap firing isn't mechanically hard to do, it only requires a little bit of restraint. But regardless, I'm sure people who love Battlefield 4's gunplay will really like this. For me, it's kinda lame when I manage to keep my sights perfectly on target and then see my bullets flying diagonally out of my barrel in all different directions. But that's just me. Also interesting to note, sniper scopes are capped at 10 times magnification. So unfortunately, we won't have a 40 times scope like we had in Battlefield 4, which I understand is meant to discourage extreme long-range sniping, but part of Battlefield's identity has always been those massive distances, at least in Battlefield 4. It would be nice to at least have the option. Yes, it doesn't help the team and stuff like that, blah blah blah, I understand, but I still think the option is just cool to have. By the way, a 10 times scope is not that much, you will see. The new weapon inspect is a cool addition, being able to freely look at your gun, which is kinda unique compared to other games, but I'd love to see a proper inspect animation as well. It already exists actually in a certain game mode I played in Battlefield Labs, and it would be great if players could trigger that manually. On top of that, the inspect on controller feels clunky compared to mouse and keyboard. It's much faster and less smooth, probably because the animation detects an all or nothing input with the analog sticks on controller, whereas with the mouse you can determine the speed yourself. Now about the vehicles, they have some quality of life issues that I would like to see fixed. For example, there are two separate buttons for switching the camera view and zooming in. So you can go from third person view to first person view with one button, and you can also zoom in with another button. But if you're zoomed in first person, The camera switch button doesn't take you back out to third person. It only works if you press the zoom button again. That should be streamlined. Either button should pull you back out. A small thing, but I'm pretty sure nobody would ever talk about this, so I feel like I need to put out these small things like this out there. The vehicle damage feedback also still needs improvement, just like I said during the open beta. Often you don't really realize how much damage your vehicle has taken until it's too late. A clearer damage effect, similar to the oily screen overlay in Battlefield 2042, would help. Kinda like a bloody screen effect like we have if you take damage as an infantry, but for vehicles. The vehicle proximity mine gadget also seems very overpowered, especially against light armored vehicles. A Jeep is a one-hit kill. Previously you had to physically drive over an anti-tank mine, like in Battlefield 4 for example, but now you just have to be somewhat in close proximity of this gadget and you die instantly without any time to react. I think damage output is something that needs to be looked at, but at least increase the time between the gadget activates, so when it fires, and the impact. Right now it takes less than half a second and you don't get any warnings. In Battlefield 4, even if you were in a Jeep or a quad bike, you'd get a lock-on warning if, like, let's say a javelin was locking onto you. In Battlefield 6 there is no clear warning and no time to react, so there is no counter. Let's see, speaking of vehicles, the anti-air tank's muzzle velocity seems pretty low, which makes it less effective than it should be. There is an upgrade option though that increases the muzzle velocity, but I feel like the default velocity is still on the low side. It works great against helicopters, but against jets it's very difficult. But hey, maybe that's by design. Another small detail, during this playtest we got to play with most, if not all, gadgets that will be available at launch, including the deployable ladder for the assault class. I think this gadget is pretty cool, but I noticed that on Operation Firestorm there is a blocked terrain message when trying to use the ladder gadget to reach the roof of certain tall buildings. I'm not sure if this is just a bug or if it means that this is too high. If it's the ladder, get it? Ladder. Anyway, if it's too high, it should display a message saying too high or something like that, so it's clear for the user. Grenade throwing still needs more weight. I don't think they touched that since the beta. The animation is way too quick and it still feels more like a panic button, as I said in my first impressions video. I prefer a slightly slower, more deliberate throw, like in all the Battlefield games, and same goes for the anti-tank grenade, which is some sort of stick grenade. Right now it looks too static when flying through the air. In Battlefield 1, the stick grenades spun as they traveled with a matching sound effect, which looked and felt much better. That's missing here and should be an easy fix. I also played with the mortars a little bit. I didn't get a kill or anything, but I did notice that the sensitivity is an issue. On controller, looking around or aiming feels extremely slow no matter your settings, while on PC you can simply flick the camera much faster. On top of that, the smoke shells don't really create much smoke, which kind of defeats the purpose. Now, the Sledge Hammer is another extremely cool piece of equipment, especially combined with the insane destruction in Battlefield 6, but it does far too much damage to structures. Right now, it can bring down entire buildings with like 1 or 2 swings, when it should really just create a smaller tactical opening like you have in Rainbow Six Siege. I honestly think this cannot be fixed because the destruction itself is pre-programmed to have certain hole sizes, and I don't think they have micro destruction on buildings, and it's not like they can quickly implement that, so don't expect this to change at launch. On the infantry side, I had issues with the sniper hold breath feature not always working. Might just be a bug, but it happened often. And another extremely annoying thing is the fall damage. I died from a very short drop just because my health was low, so the height for which the fall damage actually starts needs to be a bit higher. I still like the combat roll and stuff, but you shouldn't take fall damage if you step off a curb. Also annoying, parachute momentum disappears when cutting your chute, which ruins the ability to plan landings. In a Battle Royale mode, this is gonna be extremely frustrating. In Warzone, I think the parachute movement is very well done. If you move horizontally through the air with your parachute, you keep that speed and are able to predict where you intend to land if you cut your chute. In Battlefield 6 right now, if you cut your chute, you fall like a bag of bricks straight down. Feels very bad. Crossplay also needs to be addressed. In a recent interview with IGN, the developer stated that with crossplay turned off, console players would still be able to match with both Xbox players as well as PlayStation players, but with the new updated info, that is not the case. Console crossplay is unfortunately not in the game. If you disable crossplay, you simply only play with the players on the same platform. So PlayStation players versus PlayStation players and Xbox players versus Xbox players. They did say that with crossplay enabled, console players would be prioritized to play with other console players, which is great news, but I didn't notice that at all during the open beta, so hopefully that will work properly at launch. Otherwise, for me, it's gonna be crossplay off. And lastly, class balance is still a concern. Assault class having access to spawn beacons now makes recon even less valuable. Especially since any class can now also carry sniper rifles because of the open class system. So I'm still not a fan of that at all. I mean, think about it. Right now, the assault class can have a sniper rifle, spawn beacon, and another primary weapon as a secondary, like DMR, shotgun, or carbine, or even a grenade launcher. I think the assault class will be chosen by like 70% of the playbase most of the time. So that kinda sucks. Overall though, I think Battlefield 6 is in a very strong place, but there are still some things that need refining. These aren't necessarily game-breaking problems, but they do impact the overall experience. But I'm so much looking forward to October 10th. Let me know down below what you think. Drop a like if you agree, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and with that being said, I see you guys next time.